Hi everybody, welcome to my channel, A Good Listen, where I sit here and I tell you about an audiobook I recently listened to in story format. And at the end of the video, I will reveal the book where today's story has come from. So if you're a fan of horror, thriller, or mystery novels, or you just like listening to good stories told in those genres, then you come to the right channel because that's all I do, and I'll be posting once or twice a month. So without further ado, let's get into today's story. Tony Valdez is patiently waiting on standby during an open heart surgery. Some of the operating team aren't really too happy to see him there, but this is a normal consensus amongst medical staff in general, given what Tony's job is. You see, Tony is a dispatcher, but he's not your typical dispatcher. You know, the ones that you would talk to if you were to call 911 or transportation service. You know, the ones where you schedule different transportation and you talk to somebody on the phone to schedule those transportation services. Those people are normally referred to as dispatchers as well. Not those people. Tony is a licensed assassin dispatcher. You heard me right. He's a licensed assassin. What does that mean? Well, Tony gets dispatched out to different locations where people have been murdered. With Tony's job, when he comes onto the scene and these people are barely hanging on to their lives, he actually gets to kill them and then they come back to life 999 times out of 1,000. You see, Tony lives in a world where something mysterious happened 10 years ago, and nobody quite knows what, why, or how it came to be, but it is. And this mysterious thing that happened 10 years ago caused people who are murdered, if they are not dead already, to be able to come back to life 999 times out of 1,000. Now, this concept doesn't apply to people who die of natural causes or people who unfortunately decide to take their lives. It's only for people who are murdered by somebody else. Tony is standing there. He's waiting patiently for this open heart surgery to get started. And for the first few hours, everything in relation to this open heart surgery was going well until it didn't. Eventually, everything went to hell and the patient ended up coding on the operating room. And this is Tony's cue. Tony walks over, he gets the assistance of a nurse to help him with the process of ending this man's life professionally because he's licensed to do so. So Tony gets his applicator. Tony presses the activator underneath the patient's chin. He presses a button, something like pulling the trigger, and he releases the payload into the patient's brain. Once the payload is delivered into the patient's brain, it makes a sound like a ding, and that allows Tony to know that the payload is successfully lodged into the patient's brain. Tony then detonates the payload in the patient's brain, which causes the patient's brain to pretty much explode, and brain matter is then splattered all over the wall and everywhere. And after a while, the patient disappears. Like, everything that's connected to the patient during this open heart surgery still stays. And when the patient completely disappears, all the utensils and devices and things that he was hooked up to falls onto the table and the patient is gone, along with any brain matter or blood from the payload being detonated. Everything is gone. Tony places a phone call. He gives his badge ID. He hears a lady over the phone asking him to please be patient while she sees if the patient has been successfully dispatched. He's waiting. The lady gets back on the phone and she tells him that yes, the patient has successfully been dispatched. The patient is at home. He doesn't remember the last couple of hours, and he is at home in his bed, comfortable and confused. Tony walks out of the operating room, successfully had done his job, what he was there for, but he is quickly approached by a detective. Now, this detective, Detective Landon, she approaches Tony and she informs Tony that his partner has gone missing. So she starts to interrogate him about his partner. After some interrogation, some back and forth talking between Detective Landon and Tony, Tony reveals that he and his partner James used to be a part of this underground dispatching network situation, and it wasn't technically on the legal side. So Tony really didn't have much to say on his illegal endeavors, but he did say that he got out of that underground shady dispatching work a long time ago, but he wasn't sure if his friend had gotten out of it as well. And this is the friend that has gone missing. Unfortunately for Tony, Tony is then plunged into the investigation, and he was working some like a consultant to Detective Landon due to his shady dealings and his knowledge and his network of the shady underground dispatching, because Detective Landon feels as though that may play a part or had played a part in his friend's disappearance. So he is kind of thrust into this investigation. This investigation leads Tony and Detective Landon on the doorsteps of a very powerful man with a weird, kind of interesting situation going on with his wife. After they talk to this man and they kind of get this sense that something's afoot over here going with this man, like something strange is going on with this powerful man and the situation that's going on with his wife, they end up leaving this man's house. And Detective Landon goes her separate way to finish up some paperwork in relation to this investigation, and Tony starts to head home. And he's walking home, he's by himself, and as he's walking home, he catches that there's a car following him. And so he already knows, like, hey, this car is following me, something's about to happen, type of thing. So the car pulls up to him. It's a black car. It rolls down the windows. The windows, are dark and tinted. Roll down the windows. It's this man in there. He's well dressed, and he is pointing the gun at Tony and telling him very politely to get in the car. Tony then, being Tony, sarcastically says, okay, what happens if I don't get in the car? And he's like, you don't want to know what happens if you don't get in the car. So just save us both the stress and the time and just get in the car. So Tony gets in the car. The car takes him to this multi-story building, this really high building. And the building is still clearly under construction. It's not complete, but they are then Tony is then led up to this building to like the 43rd floor, and he gets up there and there's 2 chairs there and there's some shady, well-dressed men there. And we already know how this goes. He's met with some type of boss, if you want to say. He has this conversation with the boss. The boss pretends like the dealings that they're interacting or talking about are, just regular type of dealings. But Tony then points out that these can't be regular type of dealings, because if they were, why did you send a very unmarked dark car with a man with a gun to come and get me instead of just asking me to meet you here? And why are we here in this clearly under construction type building? Like shady business all around. They have their dealings, they have their conversation and everything whatsoever. And so after the conversation wraps up, Tony's like, okay, it's time to go. The men decide to escort Tony out of this building, but they let him know, like, hey, you can't go out the front door. And Tony's like, well, that's the only way I can go out. Like, how am I supposed to get out of here? And they were like, well, we got a little something else in mind, because we can't have you being seen leaving the building with this particular boss guy, because it will raise suspicion if anybody's looking. And so they're like, okay. Tony's like, okay, well, how am I supposed to get out this building? So they're like, oh, we know a way. So they lead Tony to this elevator shaft where it clearly doesn't work because the building is still under construction. So Tony is led to this elevator shaft. The elevator does not work in this elevator shaft, and he is pushed 43 stories down to his death. And if you want to figure out if Tony Valdez ended up being part of the 999 people who don't stay dead if they are murdered, or if he was part of that one unlucky person out of 1,000 who actually stays dead even when they're murdered, then I highly suggest that you guys either listen to or read John Scalzi's novella, The Dispatch. Now, this book is a two-part series book. You have The Dispatch, and then you also have Murder by Other Means. Both of those books are novellas. Both of those books are standalone novels. The only thing that I would suggest is that if you really want to get more information about the backstory, then to read The Dispatch first and then read Murder by Any Means, because that's the only part of the book I would say, or both of those books, that does not carry over. Meaning, like, if you want to get the details about the backstory between the relationship between Tony Valdez and Detective Landon, then you have to read The Dispatch first and then go into Murder by Any Means. But the main stories themselves are standalone stories, if that makes sense. But in addition to John Scalzi's books, I also want to do like a bonus content and throw in another book that I think is amazing. I've listened to this book multiple times. I love it. And he's actually one of my I have a lot of favorite authors, but he's up there with one of my favorite authors. This is Blake Crouch's Dark Matter. Oh my gosh, if you guys have not listened to Blake Crouch's Dark Matter book, you have to. I'm telling you, it is superb. I mean, superb. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to this book. It is amazing. So, just quick backstory. The reason why I didn't do a full video on this book, because I honestly felt like I couldn't do this book any type of justice. Like, this book is so amazing and so intricate. Like, you have to just read this book for yourself. But the premise around this book is that it's for those individuals where we have second guess. Like, you know, I wonder if I had went to this college instead of this college, like where my life would have ended up. Or if I married this person instead of this person, where my life would have ended up. Or if I didn't get married, where my life would be right now. If I had kids versus if I didn't have kids, you know, where would my life be? Like, if I made different choices, where would my life be right now? This book is surrounded by that. Like, it encompasses that thought that I know a lot of us have had in our lifetime at least once. This book is that. And it takes you through this amazing journey where a married couple who have a child, their lives didn't turn out the way that they wanted them to. The husband is a successful scientist who was working on some groundbreaking technology that was going to change science and the world, hands down. That's what he was working on at the time when he met his wife, who was a very prominent and popular and rising star in the art community. They both met and life happened. They end up getting pregnant and they had their son. And so this scientist ended up ending his really high profile career and letting that go to have his family, to raise his son, to be a family man. And he ended up becoming like a very, very smart, intelligent, overqualified science teacher at a university, and his wife became a overqualified art teacher at I think it was like a middle school or high school or something like that. And their son, Charlie, that's their son's name, Charlie, he was just a great kid, you know, just born, you know, had nothing to do with it. And so one night, as they're sitting there talking, the wife kind of finds out that one of her old colleagues has become like this big artist and has landed this big art show, and she kind of like reminisces like, that could have been me and that should have been me if I hadn't wound up getting pregnant and choosing to be a mom and a wife over my career. And the husband had a similar situation that same night where one of his old colleagues, who definitely did not deserve this award, but he received like this prestigious award and this really good job that was going to pay millions of dollars, open up funding for grant for new experimental scientific research, all these great accolades, and he was having like this congratulations party, and the husband was invited to this congratulation party, and the husband kind of felt the same way, like, man, that should have been me. That could have been me if I didn't give up my prestigious, prominent career as a scientist where I was going to change the world, and chosen to be a family man, a husband, and a dad. And so after they have this realization, the husband is encouraged by his wife to go ahead and attend this friends or colleagues congratulation party. He goes down there. They have, their exchange of words, their pleasantries. He leaves. He ends up getting kidnapped. And after that, all hell breaks loose in this book, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. I cannot stress how amazing this is. I know I did just a little bit of, of information or details about this book, but I cannot go into this the way I want to really show it the love and appreciation that it needs. This book is amazing. Okay, so I just gave you 3 good books to listen to. All 3 of those are psychological thrillers. So you guys should go out there and read these books or listen to these books on wherever you listen to books. And I hope that I have given you guys enough details about these 3 books. The Dispatch and Murder by Any Means is by John Scalzi, and Dark Matter is written by Blake Crouch. Amazing books, you guys. I just amazing, superb. I cannot stress how amazing these books are. I hope that I provided you a little more detail than you would normally get on the descriptions of the books themselves or on any type of audio platform, in order to entice you guys to actually read these books or listen to these books in their entirety and enjoy the story, the full story, for yourselves. If you want to follow me on any of my social media platforms other than YouTube, please check out the description box below. I leave all my social media handles in the description box below. If you have any suggestions on books that you guys would like me to cover on this channel, please leave them in my comment sections or shoot me a message on my social media platforms. I will be looking out for all that good stuff, and I will do my best to cover the books if I find them interesting to me. Other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.